Hi, welcome class to our 5th week, and we are diving into professional writing. So this week I wanted to spend some time really talking about the ins and outs of professional writing and how we can apply that to our upcoming paper. So let's go ahead and get started. So as you know from this week's announcement, you need to make sure that you read page 54 to 68 in A Sequence for Academic Writing. And also we are reading John Muir's American Forests and discussing that in the discussion board this week. A little bit of a different slant on professional writing. It is an article that Muir wrote for newspapers and magazines out east, requesting the country to really keep in mind the need to preserve the forests in the United States. So it's an interesting way to look at how that kind of professional writing was done during Muir's time, and then how we can apply similar skills, maybe not the same as Muir's in today's writing. But you're also to respond to that idea in week 5 in the discussion board, and keep in mind that our professional proposal is due at the end of week 6. So I want to talk about writing as a process that we can find in all writing. So it's a relationship, really. So what I've talked a lot about is the writer and the audience, and how there's a communication between the two. And there's also another element of the object of writing. So what's the point? What's the purpose? And understanding what's called the rhetorical situation, the situation in which we are going to write, the purpose of which we are going to write, allows us to come up with a message. So who we are as a writer, what our purpose or object is, and who the audience is can help us determine the overall message of a piece of writing. So different theories focus on different aspects, but ultimately all writing is going to be within this realm of process. Now, there are several qualities of professional writers. So professional writing is collaborative. So that means that we work with all kinds of different subjects, with different sources, at different editors, different groups. So it has to be able to not only be a singular individual type of thing, but it needs to collaborate, because that's what we do in business. That's what we do as professionals. Is for the most part, when you move into the professional world, you're not living on an island, you're working with people, and so professional writing is ultimately collaborative. Professional writing is also audience focused, which I've mentioned as being you focused, where we consider the audience first and how can our writing make that collaboration successful. And professional writing is also interdisciplinary. So that means that there are several different kinds of layouts and graphics and creative processes even that are utilized in professional writing. So professional writing has many different facets. It's not just about sitting down and writing an essay. You can have many things. So PowerPoint presentations, like you're looking at right now, is a realm of professional writing. You also can do graphs and charts and different kinds of graphic organizers in that regard. You also have professional letters, which is what our proposal is meant to be in. You have professional resumes and curriculum vitae and things that you're using in the professional realm to get a job or to interact with people in the job. Emails, letters, memos, all of those are within the realm of professional writing. So if you really wanted to get into technical writing, colleges have classes just on technical writing, and that really has to do with that professional realm. And we're getting a little bit of a taste of it here in Composition 2. And I think it's important to understand that writing is not something that just ends when we get out of school, when we've graduated. Writing is something that's going to be involved in your life in many different aspects. So our first writing assignment was a blog post, and that really has to do with that personal communication that you will be doing throughout your life, whether that is through letters or blogs or social media or whatever. It's a personal kind of writing, and the writing that we would do on a daily basis with our friends and family, or with a general kind of online audience. And then, of course, we're going to have, after the academic realm, you're going to have professional realms of writing, depending on the profession that you're in, will also depend on that interdisciplinary element. A couple quotes here I thought were really great. One motivational speaker said, "When I go around the country talking with big corporate clients, I'm astounded at the number of managers who bewail the fact that nobody who works for them can write a simple paragraph. You can have the greatest ideas in the world, but they're no good to your company or your career if you can't express them clearly and persuasively." And another professional, Paula Goodman, president and senior recruiter for Citigroup in New York City, finds that strong writing skills are, quote, a tiebreaker. If I have two job candidates in front of me, equally qualified, except one can write well and the other can't, I'll hire the one who can every time. So writing professionally, writing in a way that is effective in professional writing is important. Here we have a major vice president of recruiting in Citigroup. That's a major company. We have corporate speakers, people that work in industry and say, we need good writers. So I want to talk about 5 keys to effective writing that can then apply to professional writing. The first one is to put the reader first, then use direct wording and sentences, use jargon only when necessary, write with effective verbs and nouns, and format to improve readability. So first, let's talk about putting the reader first. That's that you-centered writing. Remember, communication is equal to understanding. So if you cannot communicate in a way that your reader can understand you, then it's not really effective communication. So keep in mind that you can put the reader first by communicating clearly and effectively. Try to express your point of view, your purpose, rather than trying to impress. Why do we do that? Well, we don't want to try to impress our reader in terms of how very wise we can sound and how learned we can sound, but instead using language that is understandable and that is an effective use of the reader's time. Use words that the reader can picture, can utilize, and that way tie in the reader's experience. This is really helpful in terms of our upcoming assignment, where you're going to implore a company to come alongside you with your big idea for change. So like in our discussion board last week, we talked about how you can get in touch with Scholastic for the purpose of getting them to donate to a homeless shelter for a library. And I asked you to look on their website, look for their mission statement. Also looking for what kind of community service work have they already done. So understanding who your reader is and how that reader's experience can ultimately impact what you are trying to propose. So in that way, I was trying to get you to utilize Scholastic's information, getting to know your reader in your writing to show that they can come alongside you because it's consistent with their message. So tie in your reader's experience to your work. And then the WIIFM, what's in it for me? Remember, time is money when we are looking at the professional world. And so your reader needs to know not only about your ideas, but what is in for it. What is in it for them? Why would your reader want to join you in your idea? What benefit would they see from it? So, like I said, time is money. So use direct language. Professionals need direct communication to be effective in their jobs. If I get 50 emails in a day at my job, and all of them are straightforward and to the point, except for yours. Yours is lengthy and wordy and overly flowery in language. It's going to be less likely that I'm going to act on your email than the others. So yours would probably be put on the bottom of the list. So I have a couple of examples, and this is really solely looking at word count. Per our conversation, I am enclosing herewith a remittance of $25 for the balance due on my account. Or, as we discussed, here is the $25 remaining on my account. So both are presenting the same information. The first one is trying to impress the reader rather than express the point of what they're trying to say. It's okay to write directly and to the point with simple language. So that direct language actually can be more effective. It's more effective use of your time, of your reader's time, and it still expresses the same thing. Now, this may be counter to what you have heard in other writing classes. Keep in mind that professional writing is not creative writing. We are not trying to fill a page with descriptions and sensory details and all that fun stuff. Instead, we're trying to fill a shorter page with an effective message. Other things you can do, this is very practical. Try to avoid wordy prepositional phrases. Now, I understand that prepositions are going to be used all the time. These are directional words. They are words that we use all of the time in our everyday language, and they're helpful in clarifying points. However, prepositional phrases and words can become wordy. So trying to avoid these as much as possible can help you out. So in the amount of is a wordy prepositional phrase. There's more words than for. Or in order to, just say to. Due to the fact that, just say because. In the event, if, during that time, when or while. So you can shorten these prepositional phrases so they don't bog the writing down. And that's really appropriate for most writing. Yes, you can switch things out and try to make sure that your writing is interesting and varied, but if we use too many wordy prepositions, they can bog down your writing and make it slower, and we don't want to be slow. Other things, think about jargon. Now, this might be something that you use further in your professional careers later on down the road, but jargon can actually be difficult to work with in the professional world. So jargon is the use of specific words or phrases used to communicate within a specific profession, workplace, or technical specialty. So this is when we start getting into all those little technical details and the acronyms and words that a certain profession might use. Now, it's okay to express things to your coworkers in terms of jargon because they know what you're talking about. But if we use too much jargon, it can also become bogged down, and it may not be appropriate for your audience. And this is where we really need to tune into who our audience is and what they know. So here is an example. The new FMIS system from Global provides VOR/DME, nav redundancy, as well as enhanced GPS capability. Okay, so I don't know about you, but I didn't know what any of those acronyms meant. So understand, well, except for GPS, I didn't know that one. But so if you wanted to make the wording more specific and less full of jargon, you could write Global's new flight management system provides in several ways to navigate your airplane, including the latest in satellite navigation. Okay, so that's much easier to understand from an audience's perspective that doesn't get all the jargon. And remember, jargon doesn't just have to do with the particular profession that you're in. It could very well be specific to your workplace or technical specialty. So if you're not talking to coworkers that work in the same office and same field and same position that you do, jargon may be difficult to utilize effectively. Another thing to keep in mind is you try to use effective verbs and nouns. Now, this is where we get into that area of professional writing that we actually can be a little creative, and that's because we want to make the writing interesting and active. So the language should not be flowery or overdone. You can use specific interesting verbs and nouns that paint a picture for your reader. It's just done in a different way. So here are some examples. Mr. Johnson ran quickly across the 4-lane street, almost falling down when he stepped in a large hole in the concrete. Now that's a longer sentence. It has a lot of descriptive words, and they're simple words, but we can make that not only more interesting through verb and noun choice, but we can also make it shorter. So Mr. Johnson sprinted across the boulevard, stumbling when he stepped in a pothole. So you can see through this sentence that we're saying the same thing. We're using more interesting language, and it's actually shorter because of the way that things are worded. So you can find interesting descriptive words that get the job done. Also, try to use what's called the active voice. This is the use of a certain type of verb choice in which we avoid helping verbs and try to use active verbs. So here are some examples. The company sells insurance. Okay, so the company is the subject, sells is the verb, and insurance is the object. Now, if that's active, to show you an example of passive would be insurance is sold by the company. So we switch things around a bit. You see the object has now become the subject and the subject has become the object. But what happened here with the verb is it became passive because it is sold. You use the helping verb is, and it becomes a passive sentence. So the first sentence is less wordy and more active, therefore probably the one you want to choose. Another example, the construction crew repaired the road. Active sentence. The road was repaired by the construction crew. Notice more words that were not necessary and less active of a sentence. And then my final element of what you can use to improve effective writing in the workplace would be to format for readability. So what I have here are 3 different letter formats that are business letters, and there are, like I mentioned before, professional writing is interdisciplinary, so you will use things other than just letter format, but for the sake of our assignment is supposed to be in letter format, so I thought it would be good to show you letters, right? So any of these would work, but there are a few things that I want to make mention in how these are formatted. So you'll notice the very first thing on the letter is the address, is an address, and that would be your address. So your name and address, you don't really have to put your name, but your address should be at the top of the letter. And then the date, whatever the date is that you are writing the letter. Follow that by the name and address of the person that you are writing to. And I think this is important to know. When you are choosing a company to write to, you should find the person you should write to. So in terms of our assignment, I would look for community service, human resources, or even if you wanted to go into the president of the company. So you want to find a specific person to write to. Hopefully someone that would have something to do with the public, someone that would be the liaison between yourself and the company as a whole. So you need to find a specific person, and if you can't find a specific person, then find a specific job, whether that's president of the company or something like that. But I suggest finding the person that you want to write to. Because really, even in professional writing, someone would rather see their name on the paper than to whom it may concern. So try to find a specific person to write to. You write their name and their job title if you have it. and then the address of whom you are writing to. And that will be their professional address, not their home address. So find their professional address, so that's the place that they work with, and address it in that way. And they all have a salutation. So they all have that dear Mrs. or Mr. English. Okay, so they all have that. It's okay to write dear in professional writing. It's basically a way to share that you are talking to that particular person. You can write to, but it's less personal. But dear Mr. English, and it starts it that way, and that is followed by a colon rather than a comma in professional writing. So they all have that element, and then the rest of it's just formatting. And the other thing is, you can notice that the paragraphs are not indented. They're all flush with the left-hand side of the margin, and they have extra space between the paragraphs. So that's a little different than our normal MLA formatting, and I think that this would be perfectly acceptable for your letter for our purposes. So there's extra spaces between paragraphs. The paragraphs are flush to the left margin, and you could see they have a closing at the end as well, so sincerely, with your name at the end. So they all have those elements. The rest of it's just formatting, and it's choice. Personally, if I were to write a letter, mine would probably look like the one on the left, because I'm kind of like that. I like things that are just simple and straightforward. So that's what I would choose. But if you like something a little different, the middle one has where your address would be flush with the right hand side of the page. It's right justified, and then the sincerely is centered, and the one on the right has a centered address at the top with a centered sincerely at the bottom. So it's really just up to you in terms of the way you like things to look. If you wanted to use a Word document template for your letter, that would be fine, as long as you have all of these elements. So as long as you have your address, the date that you're writing the letter, you have the address of whom you are writing to, and then you have the salutation, the actual body of the letter, and then the closing at the end with sincerely in your name. So as long as you have all of those elements, I think that it would be fine to utilize a template from Microsoft Word to create your letter if you'd like. But this is just some examples of format. I think that when we look at format in the professional world, it should be pretty streamlined and simple. Your margins should be straight. You should make sure that there's not too much going on the page. Sometimes those templates are going to have graphics and that kind of stuff. That can get a little bit distracting. So a simple, straightforward format is helpful, and it's easier to focus on what the content of the letter is rather than all the flowery graphics that are around it. So only utilize graphics in professional writing in format that are important to the professional writing. So if that's a graph or a chart or a pie, whatever it may be, if it is useful to the reader, then you can use that in your formatting. Just a couple of other quick things. When you to understand workplace writing, this is an interesting discussion by the Purdue Online Writing Center. And they say, in the last 20 years, two important ideas have developed that help professionals compose effective workplace writing: rhetorical awareness and user-centered design. And we've kind of talked about that already, but I wanted to give more detail on both. So the rhetorical awareness is an awareness of what the writing situation is. So keep in mind, and this is definitely appropriate for our upcoming paper. So workplace writing is persuasive. Workplace writing is persuasive. That means you're trying to get the reader to do something. And no matter what kind of thing you are trying to get them to do, it's appropriate for workplace writing. So if it's a cover letter where you're trying to get a job, you're trying to get the reader to hire you. If it is a memo to your coworkers about a particular program that's going to be installed, you're trying to get your reader to install The program, whatever it may be, writing in the workplace is persuasive. For example, when a writer composes a resume, the persuasive goal is to get the job interview. Similarly, a report writer might need to persuade a client to take action to improve work conditions. So you can see that these are just examples of workplace writing that is persuasive. And generally speaking, workplace writing is going to be persuasive. It could even be a memo that says, please use the copier for only workplace related elements rather than for personal use. That is a memo that would be persuasive. It's telling employees that you need to do this instead of this. So choose the action that we've asked you to choose. So it's persuasive. Workplace writing, since it is persuasive, must consider the rhetorical situation. So the situation in which you are supposed to write. So that's the purpose, why the document is being written, and the goals of the document, the audience, who you are writing to, and what they need, what they know, and what they need to know in order to understand the information you're presenting. The stakeholders, so who is going to be affected by the document or the project, and then the context. So that's the background information of the situation in which the document is created. And so through rhetorical awareness, professional communication has shifted from genre-based approach, which focused on learning and reproducing forms or templates of documents, to thinking about the goals and situations surrounding the need to write. I think that's really important. So think about the goals and situations surrounding the need to write. While professional writing still uses reports, white paper, etc., authors should approach these texts considering the rhetorical situation rather than the concerning the documents as an isolated work. Okay. One other thing, user-centered design. So this is the whole idea of putting the audience first. So always think about your audience and how your writing is going to affect them. So think about, what are their expectations? What information does your reader expect to get? And what information do you need to provide to your reader? Think about their characteristics. So who specifically is reading your work? Is the audience part of the decision-making process? Are they stakeholders? Is it a mixture of decision makers and stakeholders? What organizational positions does the audience have, and how might that affect the document expectations? So if you're writing to your boss, it may be, the expectations may be different than a coworker, just in terms of language. And if you're writing to a group in marketing about an IT issue, they're going to have different expectations than the IT department. And then what are their goals? What is the reader's goal? So the reader's goal is ultimately going to be to do a better job of what they're doing, hopefully. And how can you and your project work to accomplish that? So what should be included in your document that your readers get the information that they need? And what is the context of the situation? Why does that reader need the information you're presenting? Also think about, identify the information readers will need to make that information easily accessible and understandable. So consider how the document will be used rather than just how it will be read. Okay, how will the document be used rather than just how it will be read? So this is an example. If a writer wants information regarding MLA formatting for an essay, that information needs to be quickly and in order to start to work. So the information that you present needs to be accessible. You need to provide anything they need so that they can find, read, and understand what they need to do. So if you are asking the company that you're writing to donate to your idea or to get involved in your idea, make sure that they have information that is easily accessible and understandable. So what do they need to do? So what are their expectations? How can you relate to them? How can you make sure that your idea is beneficial, so equally beneficial between yourself and the reader? But then you need to be able to make things accessible. So that could include very specific ideas on how much you are asking them to donate. How much involvement do they need to get involved with? So are you asking them for one day a month that they send a crew of 7 people to come help you clean a highway? Are you asking them to donate $10,000 toward a library fund? Or what are you asking them to do? And be specific about it. And then how can they follow through with it? So sharing contact information will be important. So making it accessible to contact you with any questions. Maybe even creating a website or a link that they can go to get things done. So making whatever it is that you're asking them to do easy and accessible. So make sure they know who they're supposed to contact, they know what the expectations are, and they know how to follow through with those expectations. And of course, make your document persuasive, as we talked about with the rhetorical awareness. So keep in mind this week that you need to read page 54 to 68 for a sequence of academic writers. Read John Muir's work and discuss that in the discussion board. And keep in mind that we are working toward that professional proposal, which is due at the end of next week. So this is my list of works cited information. I think there's a lot of great resources here about professional writing. I do know that our textbook does not spend a lot of time talking about professional writing specifically, so any extra outside research that you can do is always helpful. So here are my sources. If you do have any questions or concerns, please feel free to contact me. You can email me, give me a call, shoot me a text, and otherwise we will see you in the discussion board this week. Thanks a lot.